Hey, this is Dan Morris. Today we're talking about how to promote a podcast, how to grow it without social media. In most cases, this is without social media. And the reason that I wanted to speak about this one was I thought it was a necessary evil because most of the time, the only thing you learn about in Facebook groups is post your images, make clips, use headliner, have your guests promote, put them on social media. Like that's the big thing. Uh, but for the most case, while those are good, you got to remember there's like 1.9 million podcasts, but only 200,000 did an episode in the last 30 days because it's hard. And putting a post on Instagram, which largely goes to the people who already follow you, isn't always the best strategy. It's not something I would avoid doing. It's something that I would miss, I would skip, but I would certainly not put all my eggs in that basket. So, anyway, if you don't know anything about me, I've been podcasting since 2014. I believe this is my wife and I's third show. The current one is called Tracing the Path, and it's a 20th century history podcast based largely on the Paul Harvey stories of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s that totally blew your mind, talking about things you already knew about, but then you didn't know these things. So you're like, whoa, I didn't know those things. But otherwise, was a director at Podcast Magazine. I am the reviewer of podcast books at HNet. Wrote for iBlog, and we have been doing digital marketing conferences, I guess probably since 2015, I think. So the important thing to remember when growing your podcast is there's only really three ways to do it. People can find you. That would be like the first way. They search for something and they find you on iTunes or something. And then the second is you've built a community, and then you start advertising your podcast to your community. And because it has something to do with your community, they start listening. That would be the second. And then the third is that your community tells other people about your podcast. So those are really the only three. There's no other way. Now you might say like somebody at a conference tells you about the podcast. And that's not that much different than you searching for it and finding it. So I always consider that found listeners. But otherwise, I mean, those are the three. So in order to achieve success at any of these three, you have to ask yourself the hardest question of all. And I say it's the hardest question because to some degree, it is a gut-wrenching question. The question is, if I have 100 listeners and 6 months from now, I still have 100 listeners, why didn't even one of them share it? Why didn't one of them bring a friend in? Why do you not have 101? What is it about your show that doesn't have them talking, that doesn't have them sharing it with their friends? That's my question to you. That's the hardest question. And the answer is, if you have 100 listeners and you've had 100 listeners and it isn't growing, like ultimately you need to change something. You need to do something that will get your audience more excited and they want their friends to listen or join in. So, if you go see Mission Impossible, you hear people talking about it. Like that, you hear your friends writing about it, you hear somebody reviews it on Facebook. Somebody says, hey, I went and saw Mission Impossible. Like, why isn't that happening? That is the hardest question. And what you do about it, that is the brilliance. That's what you bring to the table. That's what you have to figure out. What do you do about it? So we're going to go into this learning about the other two ways, how to be found in different ways, and then how to build a community that you can then share it with. But the part about how do you get your community to share it, that is in your ball court. That's what you have to figure out. So that's the hardest question. The rest of these, not so hard. And the first one is called, or at least I call it vested audiences. I call it that. This is my university, University of Nebraska, Omaha. I graduated from here, and they have an alumni magazine. Now, in this magazine, there are many sections, such as class notes, where they highlight alumni. So I want you to think about this. These people are paid to share your information because they need to tell the other alumni what the alumni are doing. So as an alumnus, whenever I get an award for the podcast or anything that I can think of that would be interesting, I send it to them. And they're like, ooh, we should put that in the magazine. I'm like, yeah, that would be great. They are vested. They have a vested interest in me because I'm an alumnus. And like putting together an alumni magazine that highlights other alumni, that's how they get paid. Now, that revelation came after this. I use a service called Talkwalker. Talkwalker is exactly the same as Google Alerts. I put in a phrase like history of cholera, and then anytime that phrase is used on the internet, anywhere, Reddit, Twitter, blogs, forums, doesn't matter where, I get an email with a link to that reference. So I have an episode about the origin of pizza, and it talks about the cholera epidemic in Italy and how since pizza was a fried dough at the time, the frying of the dough killed any germs, which made eating pizza from the street vendors a safe thing to do during the cholera epidemic, and it just sort of grew from there. So I started tracking history of cholera, and I found somebody on Twitter talking about it, and I said, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but pizza is largely, or the cholera epidemic has a piece of the history of pizza. It plays a part. So a couple of days later, one of the people in the conversations said, holy mackerel, this is unbelievable. I'm going to share this with my audience. And I thought, what kind of an audience is that? And she said, oh, I'm the head of the cholera historians. We have about 2,700 members. We have a newsletter. I'm going to put it in the newsletter. I'm like, wait, you're getting paid to create a newsletter that provides interesting information about cholera to your readers. And so just like the rest of us, you're looking for content. So you have a vested interest in my episode because it has a reference to cholera and your people are interested in that. So you also get paid to promote my episode. So now, and ever since then, I've used different phrases from the different episodes. I put them in Talkwalker, and then in the mornings when I drink the coffee, I go through the list and I start commenting or finding out what people do. And since then, Crayola, Ripley's Believe It or Not, Rico's, like all these big companies have become aware of the show and have shared it with their people because I found them through Talkwalker, and then I started a conversation, and then they listened to the episode and they thought, this is great. We're going to share this with our audience. So when you can find the people who have a vested interest in what you're talking about, they may just share it with thousands and thousands of people. That's idea one. Number two, BC Stack. That may be where you know me from. I run an annual project called BC Stack where we sell 65 digital marketing products in one bundle every June to thousands and thousands of digital marketers. So this is the community building part. So hundreds and hundreds, or like around 400 affiliates, promote this to their audience. And then their audience comes and they buy the product, which means I grow my email list of people interested in digital marketing. And then when I would want to, if I started a digital marketing podcast, I have a community from which I can deliver it to. I can tell them about it, get them excited. So there are all kinds of bundles like BC Stack in the world. If you create a product and enter it into these bundles, you will have the chance of growing your audience of people interested in your topic. So becoming part of one of those would be a great thing to do, or even hosting your own. If you host your own, then you get, again, hundreds of people coming to buy the products, and they join your email list, and then that gives you an opportunity to tell them about your podcast. This is idea number 2. Number 3 comes from Cliff Ravenscraft. Cliff is one of the most famous podcasters that ever existed. Back in the days of the TV show Lost, he created the Lost podcast. And it became so big that the TV show sent the cast to Cliff to be interviewed on the show because it had so many fans. Like it became big. Well, one of the ways that Cliff grew his audience was he bought wholesale posters of the show Lost, and then he sold them on eBay, and he slipped into the tube information about his Lost podcast. Like, he was getting paid to tell true fans about his podcast. Like, I don't have a Lost poster back here because I'm not a super fan. But if I did, it would be because I was a super fan. So if I bought it and I got his podcast advertisement in the flyer, in the tube, like, that would be unbelievable. So that is idea number 3. How could you get directly in front of people who are already fans? They just don't know you exist yet. Number 4 is called As Seen on TV. And this is a little bit more, takes a little effort. But when we mention somebody, and in this case, I mentioned Matt's restaurant in Minneapolis, which sells a Juicy Lucy burger, which is a famous thing in Minneapolis. It's actually a burger that's filled with cheddar cheese. And when you take a bite into it, like, it bursts with flavor. It's a famous burger up there. Well, anyway, I mentioned it in one of the episodes. So we found we got a picture of Matt's bar. We put on it a stamp that says, As Seen in Tracing the Path podcast. We put it in a frame and we mailed it to them. And the last time we visited there it is on the wall. In real life, Tracing the Path podcast is on the wall in a restaurant. Like, don't forget that you're not just online. You are part of the world, part of the community. So getting out there like that is it's critical. Now, number 5, Where Are They, is about a pub crawl podcast in Australia that highlights the big pubs. They make, that's what they talk about. So when they visit these pubs, they bring with them coasters, like you see under the beer glass here. The coasters have their podcast on them, but since a bar has to pay for coasters, getting them for free reduces their costs. And for them, it means they're getting their name in front of the patrons of the bar that they talk about on their bar podcast. So it's another way to get in front of the audience. So think about that, like getting a booth at a festival. If you're a craft podcast, getting a booth at a craft festival and selling something. So then you grow the list of, craft aficionados. That gives you an opportunity to then tell your new audience about your podcast. So getting in front of the people who are already fans is a pretty big idea. Now, we do have a friend who created a pretty detailed map of Hobbiton. He turned it into 5x7 cards, and then whenever he goes to a used bookstore, he puts the cards into the Hobbit-related books in the bookstore, and then just leaves. Ethical, unethical? I don't know. It seems like an alright thing to do. I'm not sure I would do that in Barnes & Noble, but used bookstore, just put a map, which ends up being, good for the reader of the book. They have an interactive map. But also on the back it talks about his podcast. And who buys Hobbiton books? Hobbit fans. It's another way to get in front of your people. The next one is called the Welcome Wagon. Now, a couple of people that have come to us have had podcasts about a city, like Bloomington, Illinois, everything to do in Bloomington. And they interview people, They talk about the events. They talk about all the stuff. Well, one thing that we've had them do is to create a second podcast called the Welcome Wagon to Bloomington, like or whatever they want to call it. But instead of focusing on the people who live there, this 5 to 10 episode podcast is for the people who are moving there, who are trying to figure out, what do I do when I get there? How do we register for schools? Where's the best doctors? All of those things. So this 5 to 10 series is easy to find because there probably isn't another one, to be looked for. And then it tells the people everything they need to know about the city, where to do everything, who's who, what's the shakers, the restaurants, all those kinds of things. But then it points them to the big podcast, which is all about the city. So an easy way to kind of repurpose your idea by bringing in new people who you couldn't get before because they currently live in a different city. But as they research what to do in the city and they come across your show, all of a sudden they have everything they need at their fingertips, and they get to know you as a host, and then they move on to your big show. So that one's a pretty fun idea. Another one, awards. Awards are hard because most of them are ridiculous, in my opinion. You submit, and then it says, okay, now get your fans to vote for you, and whoever gets the most votes wins. Like, is that really an award? That really sounds like a clicky popular, who's the most popular contest, or who has the most responsive audience during this particular time. And I mean, it's great if you can do that, but is that really what you want your audience doing? To me, I do not want them voting for me. That seems so self-serving, so I don't do it. But there are others where you submit an idea and then a panel reviews your podcast and may give you an award. Those awards are great because that's the kind of thing that I can tell UNO magazine. They won an award and then they put it in the magazine. And you can do press releases, and then they have press releases, and then the list of winners is on their website forever. And if it's a education one, they send it to teachers, and it's a pretty good thing getting an award. It's not something everybody thinks about, but it does have utility. And then after that, you're an award-winning podcast, which makes it even better when you're talking to sponsors and other people. The next part is a little bit more about how to get your audience to share your podcast. But that is, have like office hours, do a monthly Zoom, have people come up with ideas, invite them to be part, invite them to meet you. If you're going to a city for a conference, tell your people that you're going to the city, and on Thursday at 9, you'll be at this particular coffee shop, and come out and meet you. Make them feel part. People love being part. That's why we wear shirts with our, with Nike or running or Chicago Marathon or, those kinds, because we're part of that. It's part of our world. So do things that make people feel like they are part of your podcast. Next is expert. If you're an expert at your topic, and that's what your whole podcast is about, is you're teaching people about this particular topic, then why don't you do things that experts do? One of those things that we like is doing industry studies. For Speaking Latino, we did an industry study where we had 200 teachers, Spanish teachers, fill out a survey with SurveyMonkey. And then we, analyzed all the numbers and crunched everything and figured out all the data that we could pull out of this particular survey. And then we turned it into a study that we then sent to the Association of Spanish Teachers in New Mexico, the Association of Spanish Teachers in Vermont, all 50 states, plus the government, plus the Homeschooling Spanish Teacher Association. Everybody references studies, and since studies don't come around very often, they reference the studies for years, which means you are referenced as the expert, which is what you're trying to become anyway. So why don't you do expert things besides your podcast? Become part of the world. Give them knowledge. Be the expert. The next one, this comes from me working at Podcast Magazine. Our Hot 50 top podcasts was the most popular part of the magazine. It's a huge thing at the end of the year. Top Christmas gifts, top 100 shows. Every month, somebody's writing top 100 shows on Netflix. Like, don't forget, those lists are not only huge for social media, but people share them, they search for them, and being anonymous is great. So why don't you create top 100 history podcasts and be on it, and distribute it. Like, become part of the fabric of the industry by helping create part of the industry. I guess this is a little bit like the previous one, be the expert, but really be part of the industry that you're in. Like, not only just have a podcast and have listeners, but be part of it. And then finally, I say do one thing. The one thing is there one episode that your audience loves? Is there one that they just can't get enough of? If there is one, oh wait, is there one that if you could just get people to listen to this one episode, then they'll become a fan of your show? Like, figure out what one episode that is. Now, SEO that episode. Put that episode in your link tree. Reference that episode in every letter to sponsors. At the end of your podcast episodes, tell them to go listen to that episode. Because if that's the one that's going to make them a fan, then after they listen to that, they'll have listened to two, the best one and the one they just heard. So instead of focusing on SEO for your entire show, all 700 episodes, coming up with the greatest topics, the greatest subject line for every single one, just get everyone to one. Put all of your effort into that one and get that one to the top of every list for the best episode on this particular topic. And then if that's the one that's actually going to create listeners, like, make sure that everybody finds it. Make sure that's the biggest one that there is. And then this is the recap of the ideas that we've talked about here. And as you can see, they're not necessarily social media related. There's a little bit of a tie-in sometimes. But remember, you're a real thing in a real world, so become part of the real culture. Find real fans and grow your real show by targeting the people who really, really are looking for it already. Anyway, this is Dan from Audience Industries. We would love for you to be part of our mastermind group, or if you need any help growing your show, we love coming up with the most crazy fun ideas for every show. Anyway, look forward to chatting. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.